I'm Barry Malphurs. I'm the Vice Chairman of the Commission on Disabilities and Special Needs. This is the August main meeting of the Commission on Disabilities and Special Needs. It's August 18th. It is 10:01 to be exact, and I will call the meeting to order and ask Ms. Blackwood to read the statement of announcement, please.
Okay. Meeting notice announcing the date, time, and place of the August 18th, 2022 Commission meeting was distributed August 16th, 2022 to appropriate media and other groups or individuals who have requested notification. The announcement and agenda were posted at the Department of Disabilities and Special Needs Central Administrative Office and on the website. In accordance with the Americans with Disabilities Act, the public has been notified that accommodations such as interpreters, mobility assistants, or other assistance will be provided to individuals with disabilities and special needs if requested in advance.
Thank you, ma'am. The next item on the agenda is the welcome, and I would of course like to welcome everybody who's here either by phone or by the internet or whatever other technology there is, and also those that are in here by in person particularly, which we prefer that you would do if you can. Come visit us in person to see our building and to be a part of our agency in that way. I would like to say that you'll notice that I'm not the lady that normally sits where I'm sitting, and that's because I'm the vice chairman and she is the chairman, but she had a procedure done and is unable to travel, and therefore we have decided, because we can't always depend on technology, that she asked me to chair the meeting here today. So I am an acting chairman as of course the vice chairman primary responsibility is. There is we do have a special guest here today that I'd like to mention. We have several special guests, but some of them you'll hear from in a little bit. So I will say we have a special guest. Ms. Joyce David is here from the South Carolina Brain Injury Association. So thank you for being here today. The next item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Do I hear a motion that we adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Do I hear a second? Second. Motion is made and seconded. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. The agenda is adopted as written. Next item on the agenda is the invocation, and you'll see on your agenda that Mr. Coher would have done that, but since he is not here right now, I would like to ask Mr. Ed.
Let us pray.
To do that for us, please.
God our Father, we want to take this unique opportunity to thank you for continuing to show us the way as commissioners. For our mission is to assist people with disabilities, their families in meeting needs, doing possibilities, and achieving life goals, and to minimize the occurrence and reduce the severity of disabilities through prevention. In Jesus' name I pray, we pray, man pray, and this commission pray in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
That was obviously tab 1 of your, the agenda was obviously tab 1. I'll get to tab 2 in a second, but before I do that, let me say that according to Robert's Rules of Order, Chapter 44, if a board or commission has less than 12 members, which we do, that the chairman of the board can make a motion and or second a motion and have all other responsibilities that all of the other commissioners have. And that'll become relevant when we get to the first item of old business. But I wanted to bring that up at this time so that that'll become relevant at that time. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the July 21st meeting. So do I have a motion to approve the minutes? I have no changes to it. There's a motion to approve the minutes by Ms. Blackwood. Is there a second? Motion made and seconded. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is the commissioner's update. And that is, we will start with David Thomas, if we could.
No comments.
No update at this time. Mr. Coer,
I apologize for being late. I do thank the staff for getting me up to date for the day. There's a lot going on, and they helped me yesterday to get prepared. I actually know what's going on. Thank you.
no problem at all. Ms. Robin
Um,
Blackwood.
I had the pleasure of spending a little bit of time with State Treasurer Curtis Loftus and talking about the Palmetto Able Savings Account. And I enjoyed sharing with him some issues of revolving around the disability community and getting to know him a little better. So that's my update from this month.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm going to call on Ms. Rollison, who's here by Skype for the next update, if you have one, ma'am.
I do. I just want to thank everyone who has been there since my emergency surgery, and just thank you all for stepping in and the staff for really bringing the other commissioners up to speed. And I just want you all to know how much I appreciate your thoughts and prayers.
Thank you, ma'am. We're pleasureful to do that. Ms. Whitehead, next.
Nope, I don't.
Sorry.
It's
It's wood, not white. I'm very sorry. That was awful.
That's okay. I don't have any updates this month.
Very good. We don't need any updates every month, only the good updates in certain months. Mr. Ed?
No updates.
No updates at this time. Very good, sir. That means we have no further updates because I don't have any. So I'm going to defer whatever update I would have to next month. So that completes that portion of our agenda. The next item is public input, which we have none. And so the next item from that point is under our heading of programs and services, which is, and the first item under that is SC Thrive, which is Mr. Richard Moses, and Ms. Shannon Griggs is here to present for that. So we would ask that come up and give the most relevant information that you can in the length of time that we have. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, guys, and good morning. Thank you for allowing us to present at this particular time. My name is Richard Moses, and I am the Chief Community Relations Officer for SC Thrive, which is a statewide nonprofit that's been in existence ever since 2010. We came into being because of a partnership between the Duke Endowment and the Blue Cross Blue Shield Foundation that conducted a study which indicated at that time South Carolinians weren't gaining access to resources that they could be eligible for that they were not getting for some reason or another. And so what we've done through that partnership, we've also established other statewide partnerships with the Department of Social Services, the Department of Health and Human Services, the IRS, believe it or not. We partner with the IRS. We partner with a whole myriad, DMH, of other entities throughout the state. What we actually do, we actually assist South Carolinians with that gaining of the access of those resources that they could be eligible for, and we do it through an online platform. We also have regional coordinators throughout the state that actually go to the different sites and our partners and nonprofits and basically tell them about the resources that are available for their clientele and or their patients. What we like to say, we like to partner with people with those where people can gain access to, because we do realize that transportation and lack of knowledge are huge barriers to those gaining those resources. So we like to be where people live, work, play, pray, or get educated, or even receive any type of medical assistance. So you'll see us partnering with school districts. We partner with other nonprofits. We partner with state agencies. We partner with hospitals and FQA. Down in the low country and a couple up in the upstate, we partner with. That helps us to impress upon South Carolinians the message and provide those resources. So we do this. We have a robust system called Thrive Hub. And Shannon is going to come and tell us more about Thrive Hub. But what I want you to go away with is the impact that we at SC Thrive have had along with our partners. By helping South Carolinians, we've helped bring back over $800 million in resources for South Carolinians. We've done over 324,000 applications, and we've helped out over 400,000 families in that short period of time. So Shannon is going to talk to you a little bit more about our online portal that we have where we do all of this work. And she's going to bring that to you.
Could I ask a quick?
Yes, sir.
Chairman, could I ask a quick question?
Sure, I just wanted to say.
You said that you were affiliated, whatever, with Internal Revenue Service.
Yes.
Could you put in a good word for me? I hear they're hiring a whole bunch of people.
That's what they
And
tell
I'm
me.
out of a job right now. I don't have any accounting background, but I'm thinking that maybe there's got to be something amongst 85,000 people.
I know.
No, seriously, for just a second. Well, what do you do with the IRS?
We actually help low and moderate income families and individuals do their taxes for free
Well,
during tax season.
It would be an interesting one to see that audited.
Yeah.
Yep.
An IRS agent.
That would be.
That's
So
fascinating.
we
That's
work
really
work
interesting.
closely with Vita.
Yeah.
And we actually bring that to South Carolinians. I think you can't make no more than $73,000.
Okay.
And so we help them do that absolutely free.
Let me say this is on tab 3 of your books, if anybody's looking for where we are. I apologize, I didn't mention that before, but there's some nice slides on there. Go ahead.
So as Richard said, we have an online portal called Thrive Hub. And Thrive Hub has actually been created and built by SC Thrive, who partnered with Protect Solutions, with the input from our over 300 community partners. We basically said, hey, if there was a system that you could have that could help you do everything you needed to do to serve your clients, what would that include? We took that information back and Thrive Hub was born. And essentially, the main focus of Thrive Hub is it's a single sign-on web-based portal that's both client-facing and counselor-facing. So clients actually have an account that they can log into through their phone and search for resources, but it's also counselor-focused. And we train benefits counselors with our partner sites all over South Carolina. It is HIPAA compliant, we are very secure, and what that entails is when you find out that a client maybe has food insecurity, or a client has some mental health needs, or needs access to health care or insurance, you can go in and do a screener within Thrive Hub. It takes about 5 or 6 minutes, ask a few questions, and our system will actually tell you, okay, your client is likely eligible to receive SNAP, Medicaid, TANF, WellVista. If a client needs to apply and get a replacement Social Security card, that can be done through Thrive Hub. Replacement birth certificate, if they were born in South Carolina, can be done through Thrive Hub. They can register to vote through Thrive Hub. All of these things can be done. Long-term care, we're working on the disability application that is in process right now as well. So, but the thing is, instead of a client having to apply for SNAP and then go to the Medicaid office and apply for Medicaid, and then go to the disability office and apply for disability or long-term care, guess what? All of those questions are very similar. The client has to apply one time. You can select that you want to do 3 or 4 different applications if you would like. It pulls all of the information and the questions into one single application. It cuts out on time. It saves energy for your counselors. It saves a lot of paper, and it also helps preserve your client's dignity, because a lot of times clients are in situations where they don't want to tell that story. Maybe they've had something tragic happen and they don't want to tell that story over and over again. So that gives them the opportunity to sit with a counselor that they trust and tell their story one time and then have assistance. So applications are a big part. We also have a social determinants of health screener. So we know that where people work, where they live, what their access to healthcare is, food insecurity, all of these things determine, and they have a major impact on a client's physical health. So a lot of hospital systems and doctors' offices and FQHCs are using Thrive Hub now to do a social determinants of health screener, which we have in our system. And within that screener, you can, if you have scored a client low on food insecurity, you can go in and recommend services, find services right from that actual screener. On the flip side, it will help you create a task list for your clients. So when they log in to their portal, they can see, okay, these are the things that I need to do. I have a referral. I need to go pick up my food box from Harvest Hope. I need to make an appointment with Dr. whatever at one of the FQHCs. So you can assign tasks and create an action plan through Thrive Hub to help your clients from crisis to self-sustainability. So there's also a portal called My Files and Folders, which I have found personally to be super helpful. If you have kids, if you have aging parents, create a Thrive Hub account for them. You can upload all of their important documents: healthcare power of attorney, shot record, copy of the social security card, birth certificate. I have kids in college that are always calling me going, Mom, I need my birth certificate. I need this or that. Where is it? How many of us know where all of those things are if you had to go put your hands on it right now? So most of us don't. The organized moms probably do, but you can go in and download those pieces of information straight from the portal. And like I said, it is secure.
And the qualification, once again, what are the qualifications to be able to use your services?
So
The income qualification was,
There's an income.
okay, that was
Yes.
75 or so.
No, it's different
this
for,
is
it all depends
different
what the
for
program
different.
is.
Mhm.
Oh, it
Yeah,
depends.
we don't
But-
determine eligibility. We pull everything together to get people the resources that they need.
So anybody could come then
Yes.
for that. Now, the number of the income eligibility, that was for,
Tax.
if you,
That was for taxes.
that's for tax purposes.
Yes,
I got
Yes,
you
it's
covered.
for taxes.
Okay, so anybody in South Carolina can do this?
Absolutely.
Or is Thrive or equivalent located in all the states?
It is not yet. All the counties in South Carolina, we do have access to Thrive Hub. So we also have a contact center as well. So if transportation is an issue and a client can't get to a partner site of ours, they can call our 1-800 number, and we're the only call center in South Carolina that is legally able to do an application for Medicaid over the phone and take a voice signature. We record that, and that's how that application gets
Voice
submitted.
signature.
Is there, hearing no other questions?
I have a comment. I Googled your Thrive Hub just to see what pulled up.
Uh-huh.
The first thing it says, if you don't have an account, you call a number. That's not the way typically this works. You don't need to call anybody when you have something on the internet, but you have to call a number to get started.
If you need assistance, you call, and the benefits counselor that picks up will make your account for you.
Okay, so you can't do it by yourself.
Yeah, you can't log in and create your account by yourself, but now once you have an account, you can log in at any time. We have Resource Connect, which is a very robust research directory, and clients can even log in and search for services on their own. They can search by service or organization, and it will give all the information for those services, and it even will let clients know. So our partners have the ability to go in and say, we're out of funding, we can't accept clients right now. So they would know that, whether there are
So
services
if I call
available.
this number, I would get somebody immediately.
Uh-huh.
We'll try it sometime.
Absolutely, please do, please do.
It's quite a service you're all offering.
It is.
It's just phenomenal.
It is,
Did
yes.
not know the extent of it.
Yeah, and like Richard said, partners from all kind of different places. You know, the school districts are really coming on board now, but faith-based organizations. So a lot of our churches, you know, tithing is down in many churches right now, and a lot of churches don't have the funds to help all of the people that need it. So this has been something to kind of stand in that gap. And they can still know that they're helping a client or a congregation member by getting them a Thrive Hub account, by helping them apply for those services, and helping that way.
Website.
We do,
Sure.
scthrive.org. Yes, sir.
Okay.
And why do you feel like you need a third party intervening between me and you? As far as why would I have to call somebody instead of making my own account? I don't quite understand that.
Because of HIPAA reasons, you have to have a counselor. Yeah. We're very, very secure, and we have specific guidelines that we have to abide by from DHHS.
The only thing you can't do on your own is taxes. You can go in and create a tax account.
And you can search for, you know, if you don't have an account, you can still log in to Resource Connect and search for services that way.
Any other questions? So we can move on. Hearing no other questions, thank you very much for
Thank you.
Thank you
coming
so
today and
much.
being a part of
Thank you.
our meeting. Next item on the agenda is on tab 4 of your packets for those that have one. And it's our, what we've been looking for a couple of months, our DDSN eligibility division. Mr. Brian Hawkins is here to talk to us about DDSN eligibility. Thank you, sir.
That put pressure on me. Been waiting for months for this. Hello, I'm Brian Hawkins, and I've been with the agency for 15 years, long 15 years, and I was appointed Director of Eligibility back in May of this year. And what I'm here today to discuss with you is an overview of our eligibility process, sort of like some exact steps that our office essentially processes on a daily basis, which is very, very high volume. And I believe everybody has this handout. It has like some blue tiles or whatnot on there. For individuals, all individuals coming through our department for review for eligibility, as you can see, they contact the 1-800 number, and we have some really nice seasoned screeners that will go over material with particular families or agencies involved with a particular individual. And regarding our categories of eligibility, they are assessing if the person's going to be falling under an intellectual disability, related disability, head and spinal cord injury, or autism in particular. With that, the individual can expect about a 20-minute phone call, just gathering demographic information, background information, and so forth, and really trying to hone in what category this particular family may be pursuing. And once that is established, once our screeners establish the category that they're going to be going after for eligibility, they're offered intake service providers. They're offered, typically this is from the county where they're located and their residents. They're given a list, they're given a choice for particular selection of what provider they want to be with and pursue. I'm going to come back to this. With the autism category, with that being pursued, we have our own in-house autism staff, autism clinicians. We have 8 clinicians throughout the state, very seasoned with doing autism evaluations, but I'll come back to that and after I go through some of the intellectual disability, related disability, and head and spinal cord. So once that intake service provider is selected, with our office contacts that respective provider, and then the process begins of uploading all the necessary documents that are going to help substantiate a diagnosis of intellectual disability, for example. A lot of medical records, school records, psychoeducational records, psychiatric records, anything that can really help that process in determining the individual to be eligible under one of those categories, intellectual disability, related disability, et cetera. So all that material is in our, I'm sure everybody's heard of TheraP, I believe, in here. All that material is uploaded, very specific, very comprehensive then our office receives it. And we have a staff of 4 psychologists that are reviewing these categories. Often, the material is very sufficient and appropriate, and an eligibility determination can be made immediately with that material. For example, intellectual disability, we're looking for IQ scores, adaptive scores, onset prior to age 22. And that material is very much readily available in our TheraApp system. However, there are times we need to have testing completed, and we have throughout the state, we have 30 contract providers that are located throughout the state. We need some more, especially in some of the upper part of the state, like Oconee and Anderson and so forth, and that we're going to be pursuing that. So we will request testing at no cost to the family, and testing will be completed either a cognitive measure, adaptive measure, or both. That material is given back to the intake provider sends it back to us, uploaded, and then we can make an appropriate determination. Let's see, for related disability, we're looking at a multitude of diagnoses. Often those are medically supported. For example, cerebral palsy, seizure disorder, a host of genetic issues that we have been really discovering over time that an individual does not meet for ID, but they have adaptive deficits that are really compromising their functioning, and they have a diagnosis that is highly associated or closely associated with intellectual disability. So we'll look at them from that perspective under the related disability category. The head and spinal cord injury, acute trauma to the head or acute trauma to the spinal cord. We're often dependent upon medical records, brain imaging, MRIs, CAT scans, a lot of medical documentation to help support that diagnosis. And often we have that material again, and we're able to make a decision regarding those 3 categories. If an individual is wanting to pursue the autism avenue for eligibility, we have, again, as I mentioned earlier, we have our own autism intake providers in our office that will work with the family, work with getting the appropriate documentation, school records that help substantiate that diagnosis, medical records, developmental pediatric records, et cetera, just to help with that process. Often, we're able to do essentially a record review. Our clinicians, our autism specific clinicians are able to do a record review and make a determination. However, sometimes that material comes in and it's not sufficient. And we're operating according to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition, and our autism criteria is essentially that criteria that's noted in the DSM-5. So we have specific autism evaluations, again, at no cost to the family, that we have our clinicians complete, very comprehensive, that utilize direct observation, clinical inventories, questionnaires, a very detailed report, and run around 8 to 10 pages of very comprehensive evaluation. So let's see, those are just a little bit of the description of our criteria for those categories. And just to give you some numbers, I've asked one of our staff that she really does a lot of our data management. In 2021, we processed 1,269 cases for IDRD for a determination. For Haskell, 748. For autism, we did record review on 1,078 cases and evaluation of just over 460. So with a grand total of just those categories, that is 3,561 individuals that have been processed. So again, when I mention high volume, it is high volume in our staff. And we have a really, I think, very, very sound staff that are just, I think, according to those categories, very, very specific and very knowledgeable. So with that process, when one is determined eligible, that's generally a favorable thing, of course, for individuals coming through the process. If they're not eligible, the family or the agency is provided a very specific letter that details the rationale of why they were not determined eligible. Again, and also it describes a lot of the appeal process that is that they are entitled to if they wish to pursue. And with packets that are sent out for the eligibility, 3 big issues, all the letters that go out, 3 big areas that are covered about if they have a case management provider, Medicaid eligibility is discussed, as well as they are placed on a Medicaid waiver waiting list. So that was a mouthful. But that essentially, that is some of the process that we have across our categories. But again, those numbers are, the numbers are consistent and they are steady. We track these numbers. But again, as I mentioned earlier, the volume is pretty high and it's daily.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
I was gonna ask one of you. Go ahead, Dave.
Chairman, go ahead.
You said at the beginning of your presentation that obviously the first number they call is the
1-800 number.
before they get to intake. What did you say the screeners were primarily looking for before they get to intake?
Well, if a family calls and they have a child or an adult or what have you, the screeners are asking about asking the individual the various, what category they think their son or daughter or what have you is possibly eligible under.
Oh,
So
categories.
yes, the categories. So they are looking at all of the 7 categories that our agency serves. And they assist with that. One thing I want to bring up too, for example, if a person is, say, not eligible under autism, what is really, really nice about what we have been doing for the past couple of years, our division, we have autism staff and ID/RD staff, and a lot of times autism is associated with ID, intellectual disability. So if a person's not meeting for autism, we're looking at them under intellectual disability, and also we've seen them under, they didn't meet autism, we're looking at them under traumatic brain injury, because sometimes they've had a TBI or whatnot. So we're always looking across our categories. If a person's not meeting eligibility criteria, we're looking at it from another angle, if it's possible.
Commissioner Malfrist, Brian, I'm sorry for busting in. I think one of the things to know about the 1-800 number and the screening line is because of our name, we get calls from a multitude of people who might be looking for a disability check or might have a learning disability or might have a mental illness, because disability is kind of a broad category. So those screeners really kind of make sure that the people who go to intake are really the people that are in the populations that DDSN serves legislatively.
Right. We screen individuals in and we screen, there's also screening out. And like Ms. Banna said, a lot of times our screeners, if they're not meeting one of our or being pursued under one of our categories, we're often making, well, hey, Department of Mental Health might be an avenue, or CLTC, or disability, or even school district type of referrals, like if a child just has a speech deficit and so forth.
Good, thank you. Go ahead.
The determination of Medicaid, is it pretty much paramount as a first obstacle to overcome, or are you trying to determine which of the categories first? So if I were an intake, one of your intake staff, what's on my spreadsheet as far as where I'm going with the person? Am I first determining Medicaid? Is that
We're looking at eligibility first.
right?
But we are also pursuing, we're also looking at their Medicaid eligibility.
Is Medicaid fundamental to eligibility for most of the categories or all the categories?
Most, but not all.
All right.
So let me jump in here because I want to make sure you understand when he says eligibility, he means eligibility for DDSN, right? Which doesn't have anything to do with Medicaid. The reason that we give people information about Medicaid eligibility is many of the services that people need to access, both through DDSN and other avenues are funded by Medicaid. So one of the points that we make in the intake process is telling people, you need to apply for Medicaid, and here's how, right? So when people become eligible for DDSN, they get an eligibility letter, and we let them know Medicaid's paramount to accessing services to people with disabilities, not just through DDSN, but any services, right? So we say either you are Medicaid eligible or you're not. And if you're not, here's who you need to contact if you need help in applying.
So the screener would advise.
The screeners don't even really worry about Medicaid eligibility, because when you're coming through for DDSN eligibility, basically it's a diagnosis. It's you have a diagnosis that falls under the DDSN umbrella. And so the screeners are getting people to intake to determine whether or not you have one of those diagnoses and you're eligible for DDSN services. The Medicaid piece is really just to give you access to services. For children, for example, there's access through Medicaid for services to people that doesn't necessarily require the DDSN eligibility call, right? So we're just trying to get people to Medicaid. There's no requirement to become eligible for DDSN to have Medicaid.
All right, so our screener then is not interested in getting them Medicaid eligible. They're determining which category.
Correct.
But it would be possible then to get okay for a category, but if you can't get the Medicaid eligibility in addition to, or is the other door, which would that block them from receiving help?
So no, right? When you're eligible for DDSN, we don't say we're not going to help you if you don't have Medicaid. DDSN obviously uses Medicaid in every avenue that we can because it makes the funding that we have available to people with disabilities go to more people, right? Because Medicaid funds approximately 70% on every dollar. So it doesn't mean that people can't access DDSN services if they don't have Medicaid. But waivers, like you've heard what Medicaid waivers are, those are Medicaid specific. So if you don't have Medicaid, you can't participate in a waiver. So that's really we really just encourage people to get Medicaid as early as they can. Sometimes families, particularly of young children, kind of feel like I can't get Medicaid, right? Like maybe I know what my income is and I think, well, I can't get Medicaid. Well, we tell them, hey, you need to go ahead and apply. There are categories of Medicaid for people that have diagnoses like your child that you can waive the parent's income. So it's really just kind of informing people that getting Medicaid early on is important.
Now, in our new pay system that we have, how does all that fit in? Has anything changed as far as waiting lists and things like that?
Are you talking about Ms. Manis was talking about with the waiting list? I know that we daily are adding individuals according to the community sports waiver, IDRD waiver, and the HASKI waiver.
Are those different waiting lists?
Yes.
Those the same waiting?
Yes.
Different waiting lists?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So at intake, we add people based on the category, the waiting, if the person is eligible, we add them to the applicable category that serves their eligibility category, right? So like if somebody comes through eligibility and they are eligible under intellectual disability, we add them to the IDRD waiver waiting list and the CS waiver waiting list because those are the populations served by those waivers. We don't add them to the HASKI waiver waiting list because they don't have a diagnosis. So we add them to whatever waiting list is applicable.
Now, do we get information on those waiting lists
Yes.
and how many people are on it?
Yes.
So at the end of a certain period of time, do you peel people off the waiting list if you can't get them the services they need? How do we work with?
No, people come through the waiting list and there is a way, so their Medicaid waiting list, which this might be a whole different conversation. But the Medicaid waiver waiting list. Obviously, to participate in a waiver, you have to have Medicaid. But we put you on the waiting list regardless of whether you have Medicaid today, because there are categories of Medicaid that are only available to people who participate in waivers. So you can't just not put them on a waiting list because they don't have Medicaid today. They might be able to get it if they get a
At
waiver
some point in
slot.
time, if a year goes by and I don't have my Medicaid eligibility, but I'm on one of the waiting lists, what do we do with them? They just stay? So
Their
they could
name
be
comes
there
to the top.
2 years from now or 5
Their
years
name
from now.
comes to the top.
They don't just go away.
Nope.
But they're told what the problem is.
They're told, and then from the beginning, try to get Medicaid as early as you can. It'll make things go faster.
Well,
It'll also
particularly if they-
allow them to access services
Yeah,
while they're
they need
waiting.
the waiver. I mean, that's the point I'm trying to make. Okay. And they're totally aware of what the problem could be, but because they have not gotten services. 2 years has gone by. They're on a waiting list. I mean, how are they informed that no, here's the reason you haven't gotten service is because we need
It's
to
not-
get you eligible for a waiver.
Not that simple. But again, like I
Well, is it
said, I think.
partially- is what I said partially correct? I'm trying to figure out,
Partially
How
correct.
does a
Now, it
person-
doesn't mean you haven't gotten service through the waiver because you haven't gotten Medicaid, but you might not have been able to access other services because you don't have Medicaid.
now, this kind of is the heart of my question then, is where I'm going to. How does this person or the family understand that complexity? Because you've talked about it's not that simple. Well, to them, it might really not be that. I mean, they're lost. So how is somebody advising them as to the labyrinth that apparently they're needing to get through to get the kind of services they need?
So from Brian's perspective, when they become eligible, they are sent a letter that talks about case management services, that they were put on a waiver waiting list, and whether or not they have Medicaid and how to access it. So that's kind of the start of it. If they are in need of services immediately, that letter includes a number they can call that says, I need to be connected with a case manager. I need help with my Medicaid eligibility. So that's the first piece of it.
And of all, and the three categories of waiting list, you are confident that there is good communication with the family as to I'm not wanting to use the word maze, but I mean, you yourself have said, as I tried to elaborate, that it's not that simple. Okay, so if I'm trying to get it from a letter, you feel pretty certain from, and I don't mean this negative, from a bureaucratic perspective, that is getting accomplished, that people are understanding. I've been here for 2 years waiting. How come I don't have anything?
But the waiting lists are first come, first served. So you may be there waiting because your name has not come to the top. That has nothing to do with, I haven't applied for Medicaid, right?
So they're eligible, but there's just not the service money available.
They're not, their name is not to the top of the waiting list at that point. And at this point, there's a fixed number of slots that move based on attrition.
Based on the attrition of age or
People coming out,
Pe- pe-
people coming in.
They just, all right. So is one last question, Mr. Chairman, because I've been sort of trying to get here for a long time. And we had something called COVID intervene. This is the series of questions that I had like 2 years ago. And just lots of stuff's happened. Nobody's fault. It's just COVID just kind of confused things. I'm wanting to make sure that I understand and that the commission is fully apprised of how many people are in each of those lists and whether we're certain that there's communication connection, kind of like synapses of the brain, I guess, that there's connection between those families, because what I sort of was picking up some time ago and intermittently was they didn't understand why the services weren't there. Now, that could just be their lack of pursuit, or it could be we don't have enough connection to try to explain to them where they are within the system. And there might be, he's got the eligibility part and all the items under tab 4, but then there's something missing that takes those families to the end game where they either say, oh, it's not gonna work using DDSN. I'm on a waiting list, but I haven't been able to get services. And here's the reason why, and they understand the rationale and what the bureaucratic process is. But I think I've picked up, and it could just be anecdotally incorrect, I've picked up enough to make me aware of frustration with people that think they're waiting, but then it turns out it's not getting them anywhere, the families, for instance. So that's
We
That's
also have annual contact with the families that are on the waiting list.
through the counselors.
So some people on the waiting list receive active case management. So there are people on the waiting list who have an active case manager. They could be participating in waivers with DHHS. DHHS operates several other waivers while they're waiting. But even for people who don't have a case manager, there's annual contact to those people, informing them about where they are on the waiting list.
And the tallies on the people on the waiting list, have we ever received copies of their 220 on one waiting list?
You
And
get it every month in your commission.
okay, it's in the packet for how it's going. Okay, I must be looking at the wrong thing then. Okay, but we got, okay, I'll look for 3. Maybe you can just help me after this.
Sure.
Yeah, if you could help me see,
Sure.
know what to look for, that
Sure.
would be helpful. Okay, very good. Well, that's all the questions I've got.
Thank you very much. I'm trying to move forward. Is there anything else you want to tell us?
No, just always, we are very, very open. We get requests from central office for and also from different issues that are being appealed or whatnot. And we, again, our department, we want to make people eligible. I mean, if the material is there, we want individuals to receive services and so forth. So we are always combing the file, combing the case and so forth, and trying to make a favorable determination for all these categories and all these individuals coming through for review.
Yeah, I'm sure we have some other questions, so go ahead.
Yeah, I do have a question, sorry.
Uh-oh.
So how many intake providers do we have?
Intake providers throughout the state, I was told something in the 70s, I believe.
70 intake providers.
Yeah, I was told 70. Well, here, I looked down,
It's okay, you can-
73.
Okay. So you can always get back to me on any numbers.
We have Jennifer Kester, who's in our office. She's always my go-to for data. And she does a great job with that and pulling information for us.
So there'd be a lot more than just than some of the county providers would be intake then, more than just county providers. Because it's obviously not 73 county providers, it's only 38. So,
Right.
And most of them do not do intake, is that correct? The majority of county providers do not do intake?
I don't believe so. I know that our staff offers,
Most of them do.
right, most
The
do.
majority do?
Right.
What would you say the percentage was?
Yeah, what is the percentage of Levitt County?
I don't know
I
the
don't know.
percentage right offhand, but there's only a handful that don't.
So it'd be probably more than at least 75%.
How long have we had intake providers to provide that service of intake? Do you know how long have we been doing
Gosh,
that as an
years.
agency?
Years that I'm aware of.
2018, we moved, there was a point where intake was done by the providers. And then it was pulled in-house at DDSN. It was called care coordination. I don't know if you may remember that. And then it was pushed back out to the providers in 2018. So
I thought it was like 2006 or somewhere around there that it was pulled back to the providers. So it's 2018.
I think it was 2018, 17 or 18. I don't know for sure, but it.
Who would the director have been? Would it have been Mary?
Buscemi, Dr. Buscemi.
So how does that process actually work? An intake, how is it moved from a screener to intake? What does that look like?
It goes through TheraApp and it shows up as a referral.
Okay, so someone is called in, you guys have determined that they're eligible on some of these categories or a category. And then because all that's entered into TheraApp,
Mm-hmm.
then the providers that are intake providers see something in TheraApp that says Sally in Spartanburg is eligible for our services, how do they pick, like, how does that work?
The family chooses the provider first. And that we actually, we act, well, I don't. If a family comes through, right, and is screened in, they're offered a choice of 3 intake providers. Because we have to make sure that we don't want to have to call them back if intake provider 1 is not able to take the case at the time, right? So we ask them to prioritize. They're given a list. They choose 1 of 3 intake providers. And then that referral goes to the intake provider. It's an electronic form that actually moves through their app. So the form goes to the chosen provider. The provider gathers the records from the person. The records are uploaded into their app. The form moves back to eligibility in their app. So there's no actual paper that goes back and forth. Now, autism's a little different because it doesn't get farmed out to intake providers. For somebody who is screened in under autism, it goes to an intake provider that works at DDSN who gathers the records and uploads them into their app. So there's no movement of that form.
And the eligibility notification is only sent by mail when they're
Certified.
certified mail. Okay. All right.
Yes, sir.
That's probably part of the law that you have to send it by mail, right? Right.
I'm your best applicant. I called today. How long is it gonna take me to get down here to eligibility? If I do everything you ask and I do it as fast as I can, how long is it gonna take? That's what people wanna know.
I know. Well, we had a question the other day and I called the 1-800 number myself. It is really dependent upon many factors.
So I'm your best. What's the best number of days, weeks, or months it's gonna take me to get from there to there?
From what I know, from my experience, for IDRD, it's a much faster process. I'm looking at roughly 2 weeks.
2 weeks, okay. From 2 weeks, then I get on a list of 1,000.
Yes. Right. You're on a waiting list.
I mean, this is terrible. I wouldn't even waste my time going to the applicant then. If it's going to put me on a waiting list for behind 1,200 people. Yeah, I just don't get it. I'm really troubled about this.
So it kind of depends on what you need too. I think you need to understand that the waiver is not always the answer for every person. So somebody could be presenting for eligibility because they want to get early intervention for a child who's 4 years old, right? So if that child comes to eligibility and in 2 weeks they're eligible, they have an EI at their door the next day doing weekly visits and doing early intervention services. If the person comes to us needing case management, they can receive case management and get referrals to, from a Medicaid perspective, everything that's in the waivers other than residential and respite, for a child really is covered through regular Medicaid, and a case manager can make referrals to the state plan Medicaid service and the child can receive services. So it's not as simple as everybody is waiting on a waiver service from the day that they apply for DDSN services.
What percentages are you talking about? 10%?
We used to do so let me say 2 things. We used to do eligibility and not tie it to the waivers, right? We basically did eligibility and then somebody would add folks to the waiver waiting list when the person asked for it or when there was a case manager who determined it could be needed for the person. And so at that time, our waiver waiting lists were much smaller, right? Because we didn't just automatically add folks. What we learned over the years was that depending on who the person talked to, they may or may not be added to the waiver waiting list at the time that they needed to be, right? Because what would happen is somebody would exit school.
Who the person talked to.
Depending on who the case manager was and whether the person knew to say, I want to be added to the waiver waiting
She'd have had
list.
to know the right thing to say to
So
somebody.
at that point, we made the decision to put everybody on the waiver waiting list. That's why the decision was made. But I think you need to understand that the waiting list, when you say somebody comes to eligibility and they get added to a waiting list, it doesn't mean that nobody talks to them from eligibility until their name comes up on that waiver waiting list. There are other things that DDSN does. We have family support. We can offer people kind of state-funded respite. We can do case management. We can make referrals for children's personal care that can be funded through Medicaid. So I don't want you to feel like people come through eligibility and they get put on a list and nobody talks to them for 6 years, because that's really not how it works.
So, I know probably a lot of the examples we've shared today are probably new diagnosis happening. But what if someone from another state moves here and they have been getting a state service they qualified for their state's DDSN program and had been maybe living somewhere or getting one of the many services that state offers, and they move here? What happens to those folks? Do they have to fall in line as with everybody else? Do they go through a process a little differently because they've been receiving services, they've qualified in another state? Is there any transferring that happens to make their services in our state available when they need it or when they move here?
I'm gonna say they go back to the bottom of the line,
Well,
because that's where people aren't moving from state to state because they're afraid they're gonna lose their services from their own waiver, from their own state.
And if I can just quickly comment, also the services really vary by state.
Yeah, I know.
Even
They
someone
do.
who's very planful and contacts us prior to the move, we've done some of these calls together. That the service you are receiving in your home state may not even be a service that is offered in South Carolina. It might be a setting we don't offer. So just,
It's too bad there wasn't some kind of reciprocal agreement between states if they want to move around to others.
I know we process
It is,
a
but
lot. We
it
process
is,
a
but
lot.
that also lengthens the waiting list for other people. So if you put somebody ahead of somebody else, then you lengthen it for somebody else. So it's very much of a catch-22. This entire situation with our waiting list has been a catch-22 for this agency since I know of it in the past 25 years. And trying to figure out and trying to get it, we're doing better now than we ever have, but trying to get it straightened out is a monumental task we've been working on for probably 30 years or longer. So it's a very difficult situation. But there is some things that we could do regarding eligibility, but this has really been two presentations in one, because it's really been about the waiting list and what Mr. Dawkins is here to talk about. So, which is fine, but I'm just making the point for those that are listening, this has really been two presentations in a way. Although it would be helpful probably for us to bring back up Ms. Manus at another day to talk about waiting list in general. Maybe we can get more into this waiting list situation, which I think would be very helpful maybe in the next couple of months if our chairman would so desire for that to occur.
Trying to train one of the intake personnel in how to do intakes and all the procedure and all that. What do they use a book? Is there some?
There's definitely a training curriculum of what they're asking.
That's a DDSN training
Yes.
curriculum?
Yes.
And does that take place for individually? So if you hire an individual, they go through something online, or they've got a book that you give them and say, study this, we're gonna give you.
Jennifer Kester is in charge of our intake, and she coordinates all the training and what have you for those screeners.
Could we, Mr. Chairman, could we see if that person can come and talk to us a little bit at some point?
I think that's a wonderful idea. Maybe we could do it in the next couple of months.
I think we need to focus on this. I really do. There's something wrong. There's something wrong. And I don't mean wrong by way of staff or whatever, but there's some kind of disconnect going on here. And it's showing up out in the world. I hear it. I don't want to say that anecdotal proves what I'm saying. It's just that there's something I need to get a better handle on. And so I need very much staff to really, please help me and I know some others are interested in making sure we know exactly what is happening in the real world of getting accessibility and smoothly and that the agents that are responsible for all the intake that is going on are asking the right questions and prompting, if necessary. It shouldn't be in any way somebody that's trying to get service to have to know the magic words. Oh, I need this, by the way. That wouldn't be the purpose of the intake, it would seem to me like. So I want to see how they're being trained. I want to understand this process.
I'm sorry, were you talking about screening or you doing?
All your intake under tab 4, all this stuff.
Okay.
All this stuff.
Mhm.
This.
I got you.
Okay.
Do we do any user reviews?
Sorry.
Do we do any user reviews to know how we're doing? Or, I mean,
Survey people about.
Yes, there are surveys that go out with packets, with the eligibility packets.
are they available to us to see how we're doing?
We can access those. We can obtain
I
those.
mean, on it,
I know that the surveys
any
there.
service I do right now, I get, 10 seconds later, I get a poll of how they did. Do we do that? And if we do, can we see those results?
Sure.
How do we access them?
We'll have to provide it for you. We'll have to provide it for
We
you.
work on it whenever we have a presentation from our intake specialist.
Move on, sorry.
Well, I will look for that to pop up on the agenda at some point. Yes.
We'll talk internally and identify the right person.
Well, if you need a motion on it, I'll be glad to make a motion, or you can, Chairman, if that, and you've got the director right here. If I don't want to keep asking about
We can.
intake, waiting list, all this sort of thing, and I'm sort of lost. So I really need staff help to get me over the finish line on this.
How about you make a motion that we do this within 60 days, to have the intake, somebody from intake come in and give us.
And I think not just somebody to make a 4-minute presentation or 10-minute presentation. I'm talking about something that would be comprehensive for us. And that might be a special call meeting or something after this meeting. If somebody's not interested in staying for it, that's fine. I just need the education because I don't understand it, and something seems out of control here for me. But I'm sure once I have been, as Senator Leatherman used to say, see if you can help the senator with that problem. He had asked the staff, see if you can help them. So y'all see if y'all can help me. I would appreciate it. Thank you very much.
The way we'll do this, it may be prudent would be to have a lady from intake come in, and then if we are not satisfied at a regular meeting with what she says, then we'll set up a special meeting for this purpose for the entire intake and eligibility and waiting list process.
Well, there's the educational part, and then there's the question part and the follow-up part, and I wouldn't expect it to be a 15 to 20-minute discussion. I would expect that to take an hour. And if y'all wanted me to come back at some point and sit down with somebody, that's fine. I'd be happy to do
Yeah,
that.
that could happen, but the rest of the commission most of the rest of the commission would probably be interested in such a presentation. So that would.
True, and if you
We'll
have a
need
majority.
let's say that we'll figure out what we're gonna do in the next 60 days, and we'll make a presentation to the.
A post-commission work session that would be a target for about an hour, I think.
How about the night before a meeting?
Whenever.
But anyway,
Okay.
because these meetings get so long and it's kind of hard to do both in one day. But anyway, we'll turn it over to, you can make a motion to turn that over to staff, and we'll decide what we're gonna do in the next 60 days. How
Well, I
about
so move on this issue and the comprehensiveness of what we've been talking about. This plus waiting, let's just see if we can deal with it all in one fell swoop.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor to make a additional presentation for a special meeting for an additional presentation within the next 60 days to not only talk about intake, but our entire eligibility process along with the waiting list. And we expect that to take at least an hour, I would say. So to keep that in mind, and if there is a second.
Yep, second.
Motion made and seconded. Is there further discussion on this issue of the motion that I've just stated? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries unanimously. So we'll work on that for the next 60 days. Thank you very much for coming, Mr. Dawkins, Hawkins, sorry, for your presentation. And we're sorry that we got beyond your presentation and do another one, but that's okay. It's kind of you to be here, and I suspect you didn't think that would be easy anyway, so it's okay. Because this commission is very interested in all those aspects of how the agency ultimately works. So the next item on the agenda is the commission committee business, which brings up monthly our wonderful Finance and Audit Committee Chairman, which is Robin Blackwood. So move on, Ms. Blackwood.
All right, so the Finance and Audit Committee met on August the 10th. We have 4 items today that need full commission. So the first item is the Finance and Audit Committee procedures. It's in your binder behind tab 5. These procedures were reviewed by the committee and discussed by the committee. There were no changes made to these procedures, which have been approved in existence since January of 2021. And today we're just bringing it to the full commission for approval.
Precisely. We need to vote on this, even though it doesn't change. We still need to vote to say that we did vote and the procedures are the same. Therefore, is there a motion? Well, there's been a motion coming out of committee, for a motion and second coming out of committee. So motion being seconded, is there further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Okay.
Go ahead, the next item.
Yep, the next item is the fiscal year.
Is that tab 6?
6, yes, sir.
It is, yep, right behind tab 6. Our, the DDSN fiscal year 23 spending plan. It's summarized in your packet. The new initiatives that are listed under expenditures are detailed in your tab 6 as well, with detailed explanation of these new initiatives. Hopefully you've had a chance to read them. The initiative 1 is stabilization options for dually diagnosed or behavioral complex individuals. The second initiative is the Youth Residential Autism Homes Capital Grant. And the third one is the provider grants for shared co-op services for training and staffing. And the fourth one, which again is detailed in writing in your packet, is the expanded sole source initiative for intellectability. These were identified and discussed in our committee meeting. And if anyone has any questions about this plan or needs further explanation on any of the new initiatives, now would be the time to do that and ask questions. And then, of course, we approved this plan in the committee, so it would need a full commission vote.
Is the Greenwood genetic, we've got a contract, and then there's a second item, 6 million, 1 million, or is that a pass-through? How is that money?
Greenwood Next is a pass-through.
Both items are pass-throughs?
Yes, we have to pass through the spend that they get approved by the legislature. We serve as the pass-through agency for that.
So the contract is what? That's a contract is a pass-through?
Let's see.
The Greenwood Genetic admin contract, that's an admin fee that HHS pays us to administer.
Who's got the contract? Contracts between the state, HHS, or DDSN?
And HHS.
So there's a contract with them, and the contract is about what? It's not just a pass-through, it's a contract. What's in the contract?
It's a contract to oversee all our waiver services, and you do it to administer the services for our consumers.
The services being the units that they have out in various locations that do genetic
Throughout the
testing.
state, throughout the state, all our waiver services.
Oh, the contract is for, excuse me, Chairman, you mind me pursuing just 1 second? The services are for determining if there's some aberration in a genetic test, right? And but somebody seeking that is gonna pay that particular location a fee of some kind, right?
Commissioner Thomas, I can address this a little bit because I worked with GGC on the contract this year. So the contract covers some pass-through funding, but we also reimburse them for what they bill to Medicaid because they currently don't have direct billing. So the contract covers both pieces. There's an additional amount that they're getting this year, so there'll be another contract coming up.
Who paid, if I go there and get a child tested, I pay them X amount of money, who gets that money?
That they provide a clinical service, so they would use that money to pay for whatever services they provide. If it was billed to Medicaid, we would reimburse them. And then Medicaid would reimburse us.
So if someone pays, let's say Greenville Genetic Center, Greenville, not Greenwood, but the Greenwood Genetic Center in Greenville, okay? They're gonna write a check. Now, tell me if I'm misunderstanding what happens. They would write a check for the service and then I'm just trying to understand how a contract fits in and they're not getting double paid, obviously. So.
When a family goes into Greenwood Genetics to have some testing done, the staff at Greenwood Genetics files the appropriate insurance. And if they're going through the Medicaid insurance, then they file the Medicaid. So it just kind of depends on if they have private insurance, they might bill their private insurance. But if it goes through Medicaid and it is likely that Medicaid will pay us and then we give that money
So the contract
to Greenwood because they can't bill Medicaid directly.
The contract then, we're sort of the conduit, and the contract would basically say, if it's a Medicaid issue, then you can bill Medicaid, and then we would pay them the money that Medicaid gave us. That becomes then the idea of the pass-through, is that it?
That's correct.
Okay.
Right. Otherwise, they would bill them and get paid for Medicaid, but they can't be paid for Medicaid because they're not set up as a direct bill to Medicaid, so it has to come through us. We have the contract with them.
So the 1 million is an approximation of Medicaid money that would be coming through? Is that the idea? Is the 1.1 million?
Which item?
It's like item number 4 down. Let me put my glasses back.
Expenditures?
Or be blind again. Greenwood Genetic Center contract, when I'm looking at 1.1889. I don't mean to take up any more time on this. I can get the answer later on. I think I got what's going on without it.
We wouldn't have their money if they could bill Medicaid directly. But we have to have their money. We have to hold their money and give it to.
So even that money is passed through?
Yes.
It's worth noting, we also have an administrative contract for the whole agency through HHS. So there's another item on there that has the entire pass-through because we're the ones that contract with HHS to do an administrative, they give us an administrative contract, which is much larger. It's also on there too, in case you're getting those two confused. And the reason we have that administrative contract is because we went to fee-for-service. We could not have that contract before we went to fee-for-service, which is one of the idiotic things about.
We did have a contract for administrative costs with DHHS before fee-for-service because last year on the spending plan, it was a little bit less than what we have here is 31 million for administrative costs. Last year, it was administrative costs was 222 million. And this year it's 31 million.
Isn't that because if we can only do it part of the year, we couldn't have an administrative contract before we went to fee-for-service. Is that correct or am I not?
We have an administrative contract.
Yeah, to handle lots of other things that we do. with our waivers. And so so if you're looking at administrative costs over the entire expenditure, this year is 3.3% of the total expenditures, is our administrative costs. Which went up slightly from last year, which was 2.6% of our expenditures for administrative contract. Administrative costs that is contracted with DHHS.
New crisis in stabilization,
Okay, yep.
and then under the expenditures, it's at 4.5, but the new crisis is an additional 1. Is that the idea?
Yes.
Give me just, I've heard this before, but I think I'm blanking out from.
Right, there's several new initiatives that the staff has been working on for months to solve some really complex issues that we're facing, and that is one of them, the crisis stabilization issue, which is a new initiative added to our budget, which is detailed in the memo that Dr. Fry submitted to us.
It's the second page on the second page from Dr. Fry.
Yeah, and I can let Dr. Fry speak briefly to it if you can.
Sure.
Okay.
So there are an insufficient number of options for our individuals who are duly diagnosed, both with a DDSN qualifying disability and having mental illness. And a number of those individuals are in crisis. We have recommended 2 initiatives for approval in the spending plan that would allow us to establish some stabilization both at a regional center as well as
This is covering the stuff that just we didn't have the capability of doing before, and this gives us the wherewithal to do it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And we've sort of talked about this, but I've not quite understood, but.
Yeah, it's been brought up, in the last few commission meetings that the staff was working on something. They were sharing with us what they had in mind, where they were going with it. And so now that they formalized, a little bit more of what they think they need to make it happen, it's included in the plan, because we didn't have it in our budget, or, we didn't do anything with it before now. And so that's.
Is Intellect Ability an outside group that we
Yes.
will contract with? Is that
Yes.
the theory?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you.
Okay. If nobody has an objection, then we will vote on the spending plan by having a motion and second from out of committee, which it already has. Therefore, all we have to do is say those in favor of the motion that came out of committee, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. That was tab 6, and our entire spending plan is approved for $787 some odd million for the next 12 months. Now,
Next item.
the next item on the agenda is still in our finance committee. Go ahead, ma'am.
Yes, and it is item under tab 7 regarding some real estate in York County. We have been asking the engineering team to kind of look at this property to make sure that when it goes to market, that it's the, today's market, I guess, appetite for this type of property, this type of real estate. And in our committee, we reviewed the most recent activity that the engineering team did with the state-approved commercial real estate company, which they had a conversation after the last appraisal for this property, which is on Diane Road. They discussed with the commercial real estate company that the new appraised value of $35,000 was reasonable and a good asking price based on today's market. And they assured them that they thought 35,000 was the appropriate listing price for this property. So today, we're just asking for full commission to approve what we approved in committee, which was that the lot should be listed at 35,000.
And it should be sold at or above appraised value.
Yeah.
And it's a residential lot, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, before we vote on this, I just need to make sure that I'm clear. So either Dr. Fry or General Counsel, you have any thoughts on this?
Not on this piece of property. This is flowed through finance and audit. We have another piece of property coming up later.
Make sure.
The
Running at
commercial real
anything
estate
for
company
what I
says it's not
said,
worth
or-
35.
I think you covered it pretty well. Yeah, we followed up with the real estate company to verify the asking price, and they thought that was on the reasonable size.
So that'd be the high list. I mean, I can't imagine we'll get that out of it. What's our bottom line?
Yeah, I think the property is a little bit more rural than we probably expected going into this, but they seem to think that was slightly on the high side, but since it's appraised at that would have to be our bottom line according to.
So we don't negotiate at all. It's appraised value, period.
Well, the Department of Administration is going to require us to sell it at or above the appraised value, so that is essentially the bottom
But
line.
you are in agreement with what's here.
Yes, yeah,
We approved what he
Yeah.
submitted to us in our committee,
Right.
our committee meeting as the.
Appraisals are like opinions. Everybody's got one.
yeah, that's like, yeah.
There's been a motion and a second to come out of committee to sell the property for the appraised value, which we've discussed in several different finance committee meetings. Motion that comes in motion and second come out of committee. Is there any further is there any further discussion?
If we really want to sell this, we ought to be willing to take and ask somebody's.
Well, let's just see what the market bears at this time. The real estate is still very high, even though the economy is starting to go down, but we can let it go for 6 months or a year and see, even a year and see how it goes. If it doesn't go, then we can consider a different avenue, but we don't need to sell it. We have a budget of $787 million, so we don't need to sell that money, and we're only going to get half of it anyway, so we don't even know what the intention of the person who gave it to us was, but we're ending up selling it anyway, which is kind of sad to me. I don't know what their intention of giving it to us was, but they did. I mean, it was so long ago, we don't know. So, but anyway, we can vote it down, but we need to make a vote one way or the other on whether we're going to try to sell this for that amount of money. So.
It's based on an appraisal, so
And it's based on an appraisal that we have no reason not to trust at this time. So, anyway, we can.
I'll waste any more time on it and prove it.
yeah, just.
Okay. Those in favor of approval, go say aye. Motion carries unanimously. The next item on the agenda is our audit plan, which should be Ms. Crosby, I'm assuming.
Well, she can come up if she wants. We have.
Or she may need to come up. We don't know. Sorry, go ahead.
So, the Finance and Audit Committee reviewed the internal audit plan for the fiscal year 2023 that was presented by our internal auditor, Courtney Crosby. This plan is in front of you that details the scheduled planned engagements for her audit team and division. It is broken out in the number of audits that she plans to do, the time it will take to do these various audits. It's detailed in your handout. And so we reviewed this plan. Since my time on this commission, this is the first detailed plan we received from from internal audit. So it's nice to see details of this nature and plans for the team in the audit division and under Courtney. So this, again, was reviewed and approved by the finance and audit team. And so it just needs full commission vote. If anyone has any questions, we can talk through it or answer any of it.
I just want to say, I want to thank you for sitting down with me and going through it. It was very helpful and informative. Thank you.
I forgot, Chairman, could I ask one thing? I forgot what, on page 2, other activities, what is ROAAP review? What is that?
You're looking at, I'm thinking you're looking at ROAP. Oh, yeah.
It stands for Reports on Applying Agreed Upon Procedures.
I remember now, you don't need to talk to me. That was a joke, it was a joke.
Okay.
Go ahead. I don't really remember.
No, there are 2 directives, 27504, 27506, that require the boards and the private providers to have agreed upon procedures engagement. And internal audit reviews those reports as they come in. So we allocate hours for the review of those reports to see if corrective action.
I just noticed it was a lot of hours.
It is.
Okay, thank you, Chairman.
Problem solved. Well, if everybody is comfortable enough with the audit plan, it'll be a motion and second come out of committee. So if there's no further discussion. Those in favor of approving the audit plan as written? Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. It is worth mentioning that it's a moving document, so it could change at times. It is not a carved in stone document, so we'll see how it goes throughout the year.
And we'd be informed if it changed and how it changed. So.
Correct.
Okay.
Very good, my dear lady.
All right.
When we will be informed, and we are kept informed by our wonderful Miss Crosby about things of that nature, and we will continue to be, we hope. Particularly our Finance and Audit Committee will be, and the commission as necessary. The next item on the agenda, I am going to pass, it's the Policy Committee, and I'm going to pass it to Lori Manus due to the fact that I am running the meeting today as chairman. Move forward, Ms. Manus.
Okay, so I have 3 directives that went through Policy Committee that will need commission approval. The first directive is 305 DD, which is maintenance and improvements to DDSN owned properties. That policy was the purpose of it is to establish the process for properties that are owned by DDSN but occupied by DDSN service providers, and to make sure they're adequately maintained and improved. The directive was reviewed by the Policy Committee. It's been posted to the website for the 10-day external review. We received 1 comment and addressed that comment, so I'm here to present it today for your approval.
That comes as a motion out of committee and a second out of committee. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of approval of this policy?
Aye.
Those opposed? Oh, I
was delayed.
think you were delayed in approving. So those opposed? Motion carries unanimously again. Moving forward.
The next directive is 304 DD, and that was maintenance, repair, and construction of DDSN owned facilities. That directive was relative to proper maintenance of DDSN owned facilities. The directive was reviewed by Policy Committee and determined to be declared obsolete at the July meeting, as it is incorporated into the previous directive, 305. So I'm just looking for approval for that one, for making that one obsolete.
That comes to the motion and a second to make that one obsolete, which is always a good thing. We have a list of obsolete if anybody ever wants to see them, to make things more streamlined around here. We always thought that was a good thing. So those in favor, say aye. Those opposed, motion carries unanimously.
Okay, the next directive is 212 DD, which is management of funds for individuals participating in community residential programs. That directive states the policies and procedures for protecting the financial interest of people who receive residential services from DDSN. The directive was deferred to staff. It was posted to the website for 10 days for external review. We did receive several comments and addressed each one of them. There's a copy of the draft with the comments and responses in your packet. And so we're looking for a motion to approve that one as well.
That comes as a motion and second out of committee. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of approving this? Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously again. Thank you very much.
The only other update that I have for you related to the policy committee is that the fiscal year 23 list of directives and standards that we will target for policy committee were approved and they have been posted to the website.
That is true, and the policy committee will be getting with Ms. Manus on prioritizing those lists as we've
There's no vote on this one, man, right?
There's no vote.
You know it's there.
It's there now. For anybody that's, primarily for those that are listening, I assume that a lot of people realize that some of the stuff we do in here is for those that are listening, and that's one of those things.
Okay.
So, thank you, ma'am, very much. Next item on the agenda after the policy committee is the old business of today. And the first item under old business is the Witten Center sale and or transfer of property. Ms. Constance, if you would, please. Ollie.
On, I believe it was last Friday, on August 12th, we received an email from the attorney who's representing the city of Clinton that all of the transfer and necessary documents to be executed for the property have been executed. He also sent us a copy of all of those documents, and the agency will be receiving the original copies in the mail. At the last meeting in July, I was asked to research Commissioner Malfish's motion. And to paraphrase the motion, I believe the motion was to earmark the funds from the sale, if there are proceeds from the sale in the future, to earmark those funds for Witten Center use only. I was asked to research if that's legally allowable. I have done that research. There are no legal prohibitions against doing so.
Thank you, ma'am. Then I would ask that because we had a motion from last month that was carried forward from last month to this month, I would ask our secretary to read the motion that I made again into the record, and according to the Freedom of Information Act, for it to be put verbatim into the record as it is being read right now.
Mr. Chairman, before you do that, I just want to ask Dr. Fry your opinion of what was stated by John Constance. Do you have an opinion?
I rely upon her research and trust that it was accurate.
But I believe he's asked, not in regards to my legal opinion, in regards to best practices of earmarking funds.
Well, we haven't made the motion yet.
No, but I just wanted.
You can read the motion? We'll read the motion and then.
Go ahead and read the motion and then
Sure.
I
Yeah.
want Dr. Fry's opinion.
Go ahead.
So, the motion, here. I would like to make the following motion.
Right.
Page 47, under Article 4 and 5 of the Witten Center property conveyance document is about revenue sharing over the last 30 years. Any revenue from the cutting of trees or surplus land shall be shared between the city of Clinton, the state of South Carolina, and the South Carolina Department of Disabilities and Special Needs. Let it be known any revenue from the DDSN, let it be known any revenue from this DDSN receives would go directly to the Witten Center for capital improvements, which means any addition or change made to land or equipment or any kind of building which increases its value or the profit it produces. The reason I say profit is Witten has a paper shredding business and is looking into other opportunities, and this money could be used to help them in that area at some future time. If for any reason the Witten Center does not exist, this money should go to another South Carolina DDSN regional center where it can be used for capital improvement. So that is the motion.
Right.
That's correct.
Right.
That's the motion.
There's a lot in there, and I just want to make sure that, commission, that we are where we need to be at in that motion. Because when I heard the motion, there's quite a bit in there, and I just wanted your opinion before we actually approve this.
Let's see. Yeah, of course.
General Counsel, if you have any thoughts or suggestions.
There's the motion again. In case you need it.
Okay.
Generally speaking, I would not earmark revenue specific to one center, given the fluidity of needs across the various regional centers. How,
And we're not doing that with this. We're saying that if it doesn't go to the then it would go to another regional center. So
yeah, let it be known, any revenue from this DDSN receives would go directly to the Witten Center for capital improvements.
So you're saying that that comment makes it, you don't want.
That earmarks that.
Yeah.
And my recommendation, we try to be very as we make expenditures related to the regional centers. As you all know, on the spending plan, we have done a really comprehensive evaluation of needs across the centers. Some of the centers have greater needs than others. And by earmarking funds to one specific center, that can be limiting, not at this particular moment, but in a future year, it could limit the ability of DDSN to make an improvement at one of the other regional centers. My understanding is a number of years ago, the Coastal Regional Center sold some land to, there's now an elementary school that abuts that. And those monies were not earmarked specific to Coastal.
Well,
I always encourage flexibility to address the needs across the regional centers, if I'm being asked.
well, the only thing I would say to that is that it is, that should have been earmarked to the Coastal Center, in my opinion, but that's my opinion, because it was their land that was sold. And this transfer has affected the Witten Center more than any other, it is for the Witten Center, and so therefore, in my opinion, they should benefit from whatever revenue that it generates from this particular transaction. Now, however, I'm not trying to limit any other regional center. This commission has done more for regional centers than any commission has in many, many, many years. And we continue to do more, and we're going to continue to do more. I'm not trying to limit in any way the regional centers' ability to get money. I'm just talking about this particular money from this particular transaction. They should, in my opinion, they should benefit from. So that's up
to create a precedent here that.
We're not trying to create a precedent.
Well,
This is a very interesting situation, a very interesting situation that they had property transferred. We can deal with this on a situational basis as if we decide to ever earmark money again. And it's somewhat likely that nobody on this commission may not even be here in the years that happens, although it could happen right away. It just depends. So I just feel very strongly that Witten should benefit from their land transfer because they are actually losing land and they should benefit from that directly. If it is sold or timber is sold off of it.
As a commissioner, I don't think there's any hours or there. Everybody's everything. I think it create an accounting nightmare.
Accounting nightmare, you're allocating funds to one center. How is that an accounting nightmare? that we actually should have different, budgets for each center anyway. We don't right now, but we should have, for accountability purposes. So I don't see it as an accounting nightmare at all.
How much are we talking about? I've forgotten the number. What's the split?
We don't know how much money we're talking about because it depends on, it could be into the millions. It depends on what, because it's a commercial piece of property that's being sold. And when this commission was told about this originally, we were told it was worthless farmland by the past executive director. And so it turns out it's not worthless farmland. It actually could end up to be, I think, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars.
Precedent setting, and I think it's a dangerous.
Well, it's a wonderful precedent to set actually, because all it does is allocate funds.
But I think what we probably need to do is figure out the wording here. So if.
Well, I just did.
And I'm relying now on general counsel and state director. And if we need to hold up a bit and make absolutely sure, then I'd rather take that avenue.
Chairman, could I, to distill it down, I think it is from last meeting, as I understood, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, Commissioner, but the issue was, first of all, is it legal? And therefore it resided in to Constance to determine legality. But then the other question that might be the overriding question, it could be legal, but it might not be wise because it established precedent. And that then becomes, we know it's legal. The issue is, do we want to do a precedent or should it be, should we be clear in the motion that this should not establish a precedent, but given the uniqueness of the Witten property, we feel that they should receive something. This is not just a small, we're not talking $10,000 or $15,000. We're talking about hundreds of thousands that Witten could very well use. And the community might feel that this is an affront, that their land got taken and sucked up by Big Brother back in Columbia, and who knows where the money went to.
Right.
And that, I think, is Barry's point. But I can certainly understand the arguments that, and our director, that we don't want to do something necessarily precedent. Would it help if we put into this motion that this does not establish a precedent, yet because of the uniqueness, so forth and so on, to add to? Would that help, Doctor and
General Counsel
Bishop?
I have no problem with that.
Or even establish a variance, maybe, say if it does not exceed certain.
No, I mean, there's no variance.
I would go with
Depends on
what
because we
Commissioner
gotta
Thomas,
remember, we
but
gotta
I need
split
a.
this.
Mr.
We
Chairman,
gotta split this money with the
Someone
state.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. Do we know where this property came from? Was it given to us by an individual, or how did we obtain the Witten Center property? I think is the question I've got at this point.
I don't know if anybody in here knows that.
I need to know.
Some of it was donated and some of it was purchased by DDSF.
Okay. All right. I just, if it was something that was given to us by the community of Clinton, then we should reinvest that money in Clinton. But if it was given by, someone around the state, then that's a different story. Then I think, we should look at, maybe spending it on just quote unquote the regional centers, rather than a specific location. That's totally up to y'all, but I want us to really think about, we're taking something that was given to us, and we need to think about where it was, who gave it to us, and are we showing appreciation for what they gave us by giving something back? And I think
How do we know the city of Clinton? I mean, how do we know the city did not give us this land, the part that was given to us that we did not purchase? Who exactly gave it to us, if that matters? By the way, it's been many, many years ago, probably before I was born, but go ahead.
Yeah, so when we had to do the title searches and look at the past deeds, part of the property was purchased by DDSM, by the state, and then part was donated. I mean, we could go through those documents again and give you a particular name of who donated and how many acres it was, but it was a combination of both.
And I can go along with Commissioner Thomas.
But it's more likely the individual donated it. Excuse me, sir.
No, I'm
Chairman
just-
is speaking, please. It's more likely that was donated by by an individual for Witten Center that was concerned about Witten Center, wouldn't you imagine?
Speculation.
Well, so I want to be
I'm
careful
asking her to
in saying
speculate,
that,
sir.
that it was donated to Whitney Center. It was donated. So no regional centers own property. The property is owned by DDSN and it's really owned by the state. So I want to be careful in saying that this property was donated to Whitney Center or this property was donated to Coastal because the regional centers don't own property.
Right, I understand that.
Chairman, I think Commissioner Miller was trying to solve the problem. If you could let him.
Go ahead.
Okay, now that I have the floor again.
Yes, you do, go ahead.
Okay. I would go along with what Commissioner Thomas is saying, is just what, we don't want to set a precedence here. Okay, Mr. Chairman? So my recommendation would be to make sure that in that motion, we make it clear. I don't have a problem with it going to Witten, but we do not want to set a precedent. So we have to make sure that the motion is proper and in order and hopefully doesn't come back on us later on as a commission.
Okay, I have no problem with amending the motion to say that this is not intended to create a precedent, as David said, and that it's only there to, in this unique situation.
Commissioner Blackwell, did you get all of that so that we can read the motion and make sure it's clear? I'm a little slow.
How do you think it should read?
I think it should read that, before it says that after a capital improvement, it should say, that this motion, this motion, this is a unique situation and it is not meant to set a precedent for us to earmark funds, but that in this case we have because of this unique situation.
Dr. Fry, can you go along with that?
I mean, it's ultimately your will, but I do stand by my original comment. Based on how the monies were received and just the realities of regional center needs, I, from a public policy perspective, would not recommend earmarking the funds in this way.
Would it make sense to go along with what Commissioner Rollinson said, is maybe we need to figure out how much was purchased by DDSN overall versus how much was donated by the city of Clinton?
I mean, I don't know, does it really matter? I mean, it was so many years ago. I don't know if the documents aren't going to tell you what the person intended that donated it. So they're just going to say who did it, who's probably who's 99% chance passed away now. I don't think it's a tragedy that it goes to regional centers. I think that's a compromise, but it's still just improper in my opinion. But I mean, I'm not gonna say anything else about it except to say that if we want to vote this one down and then immediately make another motion that would simply say that all the funds would go directly to regional centers, that's also a possibility. But it just makes perfect, I've already said it just makes perfect sense to me that it would go to the Witten Center because they're the ones that aren't going to be able to, they're the ones that aren't going to see that land anymore. And they're the ones that are going to hear the noise from the commercial situation and all that sort of thing that's going to happen because of it. So I was just trying to get them to benefit from their land being transferred from them for commercial purposes. That's all I was trying to do.
Is it absolutely necessary that we vote this today? That's a question.
No, it's not absolutely necessary. It's just that the transfer has taken place. And so therefore we can carry forward it for one more month and we can reevaluate and we can reevaluate the motion again. I mean, for another month, we can't carry it forward more than 2 months, but we can, according to Robert's Rules of Order, we can carry it forward for 2 months. So we can vote to carry it forward. And I'm not opposed to that if there's some other information that we're trying to gather in regards to this matter in order to decide.
And I can't ignore the policy that Dr. Fry expressed. So we just need to, I think the best thing for us to do at this moment is not to vote this today, okay? And because I hadn't even talked to the auditor yet, because there's always a question when it comes down to the auditor. All right, because at the end of the day, I'm not gonna put you on the spot, okay? We can discuss this later. But I think the best thing to do is just table this until we get a clearer vision on how this will impact DDSN and how it can possibly set precedents that we don't want to get our fingers into.
Well, yeah, obviously, if people have some strong opinions about it, we just need to get it where we all
Right.
feel comfortable with it.
That's
Right
it.
now, we're not doing that, so
Right.
I think we should move on.
My opinion is some of my friends are for this and some of my friends are against it, and I'm for my friends. So I move, Mr. Chairman, that we carry this over till the next meeting.
Okay, we'll carry it over.
So move.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to see us send this to a committee for review prior to this. How about we send it to Finance and Audit and let them look at the options available to us and come back with a plan? Would that be a problem?
not a problem for me.
Chairwoman of Finance is saying nothing.
I don't think Chairwoman of
She doesn't
Finance.
want that ball.
I don't know if she wants that ball, but we'll.
You want me to send it to
I want to have
legislative?
it because it's obviously extremely important to everybody here, so I will take it.
Okay, well, then that'll
Be
be,
on
the-
my agenda.
well, then that'll be an item on the next, and I'll be listening in on that meeting. That'll be an item in the next, Finance and Audit Committee, and then they will bring a report to us at the next meeting then.
And I would ask the auditor to look further, so from an audit perspective.
Talk to Courtney about it.
So then that motion is carried forward to next month pending a recommendation from the Finance Committee.
Yeah.
For the record.
Did we vote?
And they don't have to make a decision, or they can just recommend that we vote either way on the motion as it is stated.
Did we vote it, or we just?
No, we're voting to transfer it.
No, but I'm saying we voted to
Do we need
carry it out.
a motion in a second and?
Well, we probably, I'll
Carry it
withdraw,
over.
I will say that I will allow the motion to be transferred is all we're doing. So we've made a motion, the motion is on the table. And so therefore the person who made the motion is allowing the motion to be transferred to the next meeting. And so if that is the will of the committee, and so we need a second to transfer it to the next meeting.
I don't know the definition of transfer, but
We're transferring a motion from one meeting to the next.
We're sending it back to committee. It's going back to committee is where it's going. It's just like sending a bill back to committee after the House or Senate has looked at it. We're just sending it back to committee for them to review it and give us an opinion.
And we're bringing it up next month.
Yeah.
Because we carried it forward to next month. So, and in the meantime, the Finance Committee is going to review it.
Finance Committee, or the people on the Finance Committee, not the chair, the commissioners, are under the instruction of the director who stated that she thinks the policy is bad. That puts them in a position of no win.
I don't think she said it was bad.
Well, I think she said she wouldn't do it.
the word policy, and I understand policy.
I don't think she said it was bad, though.
I think she said she wouldn't do it, which makes it.
She's here, you could ask her what she meant. You better run out.
I think we agreed that we all felt like it should not be earmarked for one center, that it should be for any regional center. And that's what I thought we were gonna take the motion and add that specifically in.
But the policy, that policy, we need to take that back to committee and we look at this.
Your policy was, where you said something like it wasn't.
So earmarking it to all regional centers, I think is good public policy.
Good public policy is what she's
Not-
saying.
But
So it's not really, we
limiting
don't
it
need a
to
policy
only
for it.
Witten, it gives me pause.
Right, which is what I just said,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
everyone seemed to be amendable to her suggestion that it not be just going to Witten, that it go to all regional centers. And basically, we just need to create the motion that says that.
Right.
And we just a little time to do that,
I mean,
as opposed to trying to do it right now, since we've already spent 20 minutes on this topic. You know?
well,
That's
I
what-
get
that's
back
what-
to balance
Well,
on
then
my
the
time.
finance committee can do that and bring it to us
Yeah,
next
and
month.
that's what we'll do.
That's what we decided we would do, and so if you
But
want
we
to.
don't need a policy written.
No, we don't need a policy, we just need,
Making sure.
we're just making more of a motion than it was actually intended to be made originally, but that's fine. Anyway, moving on, I think motions like this are helpful, and I think discussions like this are helpful. I'm not at all opposed to these kind of discussions. I don't think we have enough of them. Of these kinds, so I think it's good. And I don't expect us all to agree, and I don't expect us all to, that's why we have 7 members of this commission instead of 2 or 10, because we need an odd number to decide things. Now, since that has been carried forward, that motion's been carried forward to next month, I don't think there's anything else on the Witten Center sale update at this time. The next item on the agenda is the hurricane season update from Mr. Rob McBurney. Thank you, sir.
All right, and let me start by saying, I'll give you a quick weather report, and when it comes to hurricanes and the weather this time of year, no news is good news.
Yeah.
And since the last meeting, we have had 0 news as far as new development of storms and hurricanes in the Atlantic, and we've been very lucky in that regard.
So far, kind of quiet.
So far, so good. It is not forecast to stay that way, however. As you know, in South Carolina, we know that usually the beginning of the first 2 weeks of September are usually the most active time for hurricanes in the Atlantic. And so the forecasters that I spoke about at the last meeting, they're standing on their original assessment of and their prediction for hurricane season to be 15 to 20 named storms, of which we've had 3 so far, 5 to 10 hurricanes, which we have not had one of those so far, and 3 to 5 major hurricanes.
They predict landfall, which land?
They do not
The number that would be
predict,
landfall?
until the storm develops, they don't start predicting landfall or anything like that yet. But that's what they're predicting, that it could be produced in the Atlantic this year. So we will continue to be vigilant, and we will continue to provide updates to our provider network and to the folks in the community as we go forward. We did have our hurricane meeting August 1st, where we talked about a number of things. We talked about preparation. We talked about drilling for evacuations, things like that, and the weather reports as well. We talked about doing outreach to the community. We encourage the providers to use the resources that we produce to push them out to folks in the community, as we're doing. I want to thank PJ has done a great job of highlighting with our social media hurricane preparation tips. We're doing that on a weekly basis, and putting that information out to folks in a wider, casting a wider net for folks in the community. We have, since the last meeting, we have issued 2 situation reports on hurricane season, and that's basically passing along information, passing along resources. We've had great communication with EMD, with the state climatologist, and we stay in constant contact this time of year. We're also staying in touch with our disability partners, as well as especially the EMD functions of ESF6, ESF8, of which we're members, and the South Carolina Planning Committee for people with functional access needs, as well as Able SC has got a group that they that we provide disaster partners in preparedness. We participate in that as well. ABLE, we were able to put out that ABLE is having emergency preparation training next week. So we put that out in our situation report, and we'll be putting it out on our social media as well to encourage folks to, that's aimed at folks in the community that to get prepared, how to prepare for hurricanes. So
And the issue, Chairman, that came up last time on the evacuation issue on the coastal.
Right.
And I'd love to see, I'd love to see something, Brother Bernie, I tell you, that's kind of got me nervous. I mean, that's not really an evacuation, you know, they think we tough this out.
where Coastal Center is in Somerville is 89 feet over sea level.
Yeah.
So, and I've looked at historical flooding situations in Somerville, and there isn't a lot of history of flooding in Somerville, given the elevation where Coastal Center is. But you know, for instance, your Hurricane Hugo, for instance, which is kind of the last, you know, really, you know, huge Category 5 storm that South Carolina has dealt with. You know, a lot of that was wind damage and not flooding. But every storm is different, and every storm is situational.
Yeah,
you know, I don't want to ever say there couldn't be.
There's
right.
And I've not been to coastal. I mean, but I mean, what would I know if I went there and looked? I'm not a meteorologist or whatever. But is there any close? I've done a lot of closings though, where if you don't account for the water, you could be making a big mistake. Is there a big water source? I mean, we just, you know, went through a Kentucky thing where you know the contour of the land and everything once in 1,000 years. Well, there you go.
Yeah. Well, I would say this in Charleston, the low country flooding is you know, with tides, particularly flooding, tides and rain flooding is prevalent in that part of the world. The part of Somerville where coastal is not as flood prone as other parts of the low country are. I will say, I said that, but let me also say that we never say never, because you never know what the storm's going to look like. You never know what and there are a lot of factors that go into it, because it hit at high tide, that type of thing, for storm surge. We evaluate every hurricane as it comes. And modern forecasting allows us to know several days in advance what kind of hurricane it is, map it out. The experts will map it out and say, this is what we expect for this area. And we make our evacuation decisions based on that, based on what the experts are telling us the storm is going to be.
The coastal people themselves, they're not nervous about the possibility of the need to evacuate, but they think they can ride out most anything because they're far enough inland, right?
Right, and the fact that they have there are, you know, like I said, we talked last month about the Kevlar covers with windows. We're also putting film on the windows that are that make them basically shatter resistant for missile hazards, things like that. So there are a number of protections there for coastal generators, things like that. There are a number of things that help them weather one of these storm situations. Now, again, we'd have to discuss what the experts are telling us about a storm, and we take it on a case-by-case basis. But you know, it's a storm-by-storm basis, basically. Where the storm is going to hit, when it's going to hit, how big it is, whether this is a storm that's going to produce a lot of storm surge. And there are some storms that produce more storm surge than others. And those are all factors that we would take into account. As experts, the state climatologist, DMD, National Weather Service.
One last question.
Would all tell us that.
I want to hear that you brought this up to the groups that you're involved in, and there's a concern that, because of who is in that center, the clientele that's in that center, we can't have them stranded, and then you've got X number of people who can't get out. The huge New Jersey storm for 5 years ago, it was a category 2. It was a Cat 2.
Right.
No, not 3, not 4, not 5.
That's correct.
Cat 2, because everything the confluence was just there.
That's correct.
And I'm sort of, are there close by rivers? I don't know how the confluence of the rivers go. How close are we to any of those?
Again, we take all that into account when
you go speak
when we look at the storm.
Okay, you're presenting this to the groups you're in as okay.
Yes,
that's all the question I got.
And we get a lot of feedback, a lot of recommendations from a number of state agencies and federal agencies on that regard. And then we take it to our experts, and we make a determination based on our folks, what would the risk of evacuating them be, because there is a risk to evacuate.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Particularly medically fragile individuals,
Yeah.
evacuating them puts them at risk, at a certain amount of risk. So we have to weigh that risk.
Yeah.
That's the call that we ultimately.
They won't be calling you. They'll be calling you. Why were they not evacuated? What were you thinking?
Next time you fly reconnaissance, I'll fly with you. Save me a seat.
I would love to do that at some point in time, but that is not my role. My role is feet on the ground. Pending any questions, any other questions?
Further questions for Mr. Herney?
All right, thank y'all.
Thank you for your help in that regard, sir. And the next item on the agenda is the quarterly incident report, which will be Ann Dalton. Please, ma'am.
Good afternoon. Included within your packets, you have the quarterly quality management report. This month, I did something a little bit different. We talked a lot about incident management and the abuse, neglect, and exploitation reports and critical incidents. But for perspective, the first sheet that you have there, mostly in yellow, includes numbers for our quality management division as a whole. There were some questions during a recent policy committee meeting asking about the number of different types of reviews or interactions with providers. So I included this information just as a reference for you so that you would see how often we are interacting with provider, or how often there is an assessment with providers. So as you review this information, if you have any questions, please let me know. As you move on to the next sheet in your packet, this one is mostly in blue for the community settings. For the abuse, neglect, and exploitation reports in the fourth quarter, at the end of the fiscal year, we had 521 allegations of abuse. This included 371 individual reports, keeping in mind that one report can include multiple allegations or multiple people. 28% of these allegations in fiscal year 22 were related to standard of care issues. So there was no finding of criminal abuse, neglect, or exploitation, but there may have been dignity and respect issues. There may have been staff supervision issues, which is the theme that we have seen throughout the year. 2.3% of the allegations resulted in a criminal arrest for fiscal year 22. For the critical incident reporting, there were 1,245 critical incidents reported throughout the year. And these numbers are trending very closely to the numbers represented in the 5-year averages, and of course for each quarter throughout the year. As you flip over to the third sheet in your packet, That sheet outlines incident management trends for the regional centers. There were 70 allegations of A&E reported in the fourth quarter for fiscal year 22. This brings our total to 251 allegations for the fiscal year, or 165 individual reports. We have had a sharp increase over prior years, but as we have discussed in prior meetings, there has been a lot of stress within the regional center system due to a higher number of vacancies, additional scrutiny, additional review within that setting, and then some fallout from prior allegations. We also have issues similar to the community settings related to standard of care issues within the regional centers. For critical incidents, we've had a total of 160 critical incidents reported, and those trends are also pretty close to the 5-year averages for critical incidents. For death reporting, we had a total of 36 fatalities within the regional centers for fiscal year 22, which is pretty average. Our 5-year average for fatalities is 33. Do you guys have any questions?
Critical just means it falls under these 5 categories.
No, there are many different categories for critical incidents. These are the categories that seem to, that folks seem to inquire about the most, but we capture about 25 different categories within critical incidents, to include peer-to-peer aggression. We include elopement, which I did reference here, the law enforcement. We have, we include assault and aggression. There's a long list if you would like for me to provide that.
Love your Q&M.
It helps put things in perspective, I think.
All right. Yeah, you did a much better job than those in the past with this proposal. So we're thankful for that. Is there any other questions for Ms. Calkins? As we move forward, if there's no other questions, there's no need to vote on this report, so we will move forward to Ms. Courtney Crosby, who is, that, by the way, I'm sorry to say, was tab 11, if those of anybody was trying to find it. Of course, it's a little bit late now. But the internal audit report is next. Ms. Courtney.
Thank you. So I'll start with our agreed upon procedures reports update. So that's our ROAPs. So we've completed the review of 35 of the 40 reports for the DSM boards, with 5 in process. That review is complete for 7 of the 9 private providers that have June 30 year ends. There are 2 in process there. We have 3 private providers with September 30 year ends. We've completed the review of 2 of those reports and have not received the 3rd report. We had reports due on April 30th for 33 private providers with a December 31st year end. We received 31 of the 33. Our review is complete for 25 and in process for 6. We do have 1 private provider with a March 31st year end. So their report was due us on July 31st. It has been received and our review is complete. So our contract reductions for 2021 are currently at $47,500. So that includes late audit reports, the financial statement audits, late reports on applying agreed upon procedures, and also late corrective action plans. So next is our update on our tracking report. So our audit observation tracking report was updated for the 4th quarter of fiscal year 22 and emailed to the commissioners on July 15th. So since our update in July, we completed procedures and issued follow-up memos to 3 providers, and your tracking report includes the updated status for those corrective action plans. So my audit plan update will be brief. So our fiscal year 23 audit plan included hours for some carry forward engagements from fiscal year 22. So we'll prioritize completing those. And as we initiate and hold our entrance conferences for the audits that were included in that recently approved fiscal year 23 audit plan, we'll be sure to update the commission. So may I answer any questions? Thank you.
If there's no questions for Ms. Courtney, we will dismiss her. Thank you very much, my dear ma'am. The next item on the agenda, well, we do need a motion to approve her, well, no, we actually, sorry, we do not. Sorry. The next item on the agenda is the financial report under new business. I was one ahead of us, sorry.
Thank you for approving the spending plan. So our new approved spending plan at $938.5 million for the year. This is our expenditures as of the end of July 31st. We've expended $68.9 million, which includes $46.9 million of the wash at HHS, $21.9 million at DDSN. So that leaves us at, we're at 92.66 expended. The percent for the remaining is 92.66, and we're 0.99% under for this month.
For this month.
For the month of July.
Is there further questions for for our interim CFO?
And we normally approve, pass, or vote on the
We are going to, when I was asking if there was any other questions for her first.
Okay.
I were called by a senator and said, it was a recurring state funds for y'all with 114 million. You've got 128 million in your account. I don't need to give you anything this year. What would you say to that?
I would say that the 128 million is non-recurring, one-time cash, and it will only last very little bit with the size of our agency.
They won't buy that, but we could try it.
We would also say that we need a reserve fund in this agency, which we've never had in our history. And that's something that I think that the finance committee and you should evaluate the possibility of having a reserve fund so that that money was not spent for anything except what the commission would allocate it for. And that's something that we should have had, I think, for many, many, many years, and we never have had that I know of in the history of this agency. And I certainly know within the last 20 years we haven't.
Is that carry forward for with it committed already to things that would be necessary to be spent? It's not sort of money in the bank and that we can, that's padding our.
Some of it is already kind of earmarked for possible paybacks for cost report settlements that we're doing with HHS. So we have to be mindful of holding back certain amount of monies for that. We do want to put in a reserve for us to have as an agency and any other possible initiatives that would come up.
So all right, back in my old finance, is this carryover that is in essence designated? And you said part of it was reserve. I mean, what percent are we talking about?
I wouldn't know the percent off the top of my head.
Okay.
But we're going to work on a worksheet. Dr. Brian and I looked at some yesterday, and we want to have some stuff laid out so it's clear.
I think all agencies have the carry forward, but where the legislature becomes involved, if it seems that was designated and, from the previous year, it didn't get spent for whatever reason in a hot, now we essentially have found money without there being a line item attribution. So then obviously your finance guys on Ways and Means and Finance Committee in the Senate start asking questions, what are y'all going to do with all that money? I mean, why do you have that much money hanging around? Because it should be. And the answer would be, well, there are a lot of expenditures that pop up and here's sort of a list. We have to have that money potentially it's just like an attorney when he's settling a case. He gets the case settled, but he might not distribute all the money because he holds some in reserve. That's his trust account until everything we know is paid for. And then when it's paid for, then the client, if anything's left over after costs have been, attributed, the client then would get the remainder. So it's sort of that idea, and if it gets to be too much relative to the size of the agency. So, I mean, the answer to Dr. Kohler's question, the Commissioner Kohler's question, I think would be, from your perspective, if I or he or whoever made such a phone call, here's the list of where the money is probably going to go. We don't have the exact amounts, but it's going to be spent except for perhaps 8, 12, 15%. That's the kind of ammunition I think you would need, I would need to a question like that, which could, if we were ever in front of one of those groups, could very well be a question that would be asked.
That's correct.
We created a document like
Be good to have that
that.
again.
Met on this yesterday.
And then like 2 months from now, or 3 months from now, or whatever, to know where the money ended up going. So that would sort of give us an historical analysis of the extra carry forward.
Exactly.
I have a question. Are you done with your?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What's the status of the cost reports, where they stand?
The cost report for fiscal year 20 has been done. It's being reviewed. As of yesterday, there were a couple of little items that the person that we hired to help us review, Kristen Gord, brought up. So as of yesterday afternoon, we were looking at those. It's very, very close.
Okay, and so what year, right now, is it the 2020? Which one? Are you
The
saying
one that
it's-
we're doing right now is
Yeah.
20, fiscal year 20.
Yeah.
21 was done previously.
So it's 2020, and that's the last outstanding one?
That's right. And now we'll be faced with 22, which will be a booger because we're 75% DDSN, 25% HHS. So it's a lot of considerations of how we're going to handle that cost report.
It's different. Model that's.
Correct.
That we're currently under now. Okay, so, okay, good. So the 2021 is almost done. And, when will we know what we have to pay to DHHS? Like, or.
That was gonna be my question about the fines, possibilities. How many months do you think it'd be before we knew how much money we were gonna have to pay due to the fines we would receive?
Dr. Fry and Director Kerr will be meeting to decide how we're going to cost settle.
That wouldn't happen before October, November, next year? Like when, what's the time, when would something like that happen most likely?
We have regular meetings with HHS.
Right.
And after we get this final one submitted, it'll be an agenda item.
Okay.
Ongoing conversation until we.
Okay. We'll wait to hear updates on that as we go forward. Okay. Thank you.
If there's no other questions for Ms. Nancy Rumbaugh, we would ask that we would entertain a motion to approve her report.
So moved. Second.
But, yes, I was about to say he had seconded, but now you seconded. So Mr. Miller has approved and Ms. Roberts Blackwood has seconded. So we had a motion to second on the floor. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The next item on the agenda is, to my left, our Executive Director update.
Yeah, I will be brief. I just want to highlight a couple of items. We have already sent a communication out about the Golden Palmetto Award. And I just want to remind that the deadline for that is September 1st. That is our way of thanking county governments who put people with disabilities and special needs first. We will be resending that communication just to make sure that it's at the top of folks' inbox, but wanted to use this as an opportunity to highlight that. And again, the deadline is September 1st. Also, DDSN is working with South Carolina State Fair to host 2 events for citizens with disabilities. There will be a sensory-friendly morning and an exceptional Citizens Day. The details and dates are not final, but expect an announcement soon. We're excited about that. And last, I want to highlight that we participated in the Wheel to Surf event at Surfside Beach, sponsored by the Coastal Adaptive Sports. 80 adaptive surfers from across the country participated in the largest event in that organization's history. They also host basketball, cycling, kayaking, softball, wheelchair games, and drum circles for families and consumers in the South Carolina coastal region. So thank you, PJ.
That's it.
Okay. That's all for her report. There is no need to vote on her report, obviously. The next item for me to mention is that we will have our next meeting on September 15th, 2022 at 10 a.m. as normal, as far as we know right now. Assuming there's no hurricane or anything negative like that would come our way, since September is a big hurricane month. But we trust that we will be put up in motels if necessary and put up in here if necessary in order to conduct the meeting of the Commission on Disabilities. So is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. Therefore, we don't need to vote on that. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.